Welcome, everyone, to the Gridiron Review's debut podcast episode. I'm Zach, that's Jack, and we are glad to have you all here and are excited to be a part of your NFL offseason coverage. We'll be kicking off our podcast with Jack's quick evaluation of the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, and then we will both share our thoughts around the East-West Shrine game, and we'll finish up with a preview of what's to come. Jack, take it away.
I want to welcome everyone to the first podcast of the Gridiron Review. We're really excited to have our launch happen within the week. First podcast tonight and hopefully website by the end of the week. But let's get right into it. I watched the NFLPA Bowl earlier today. In terms of quarterback play, there was three quarterbacks that kind of stood out to me. It was Cal quarterback Chase Garber, HBCU prospect from Alabama A&M, Adil Glass, and Illinois quarterback Brandon Peters. Garber started. He was the first quarterback out. I thought that his mobility was really good, and he did a really nice job of extending plays. He had a couple nice throws into tight windows. The biggest concern I saw with him was that he could lose some of the throws, meaning like he would float some, or it would just be like it would be ducks. Like it just wasn't. There was definitely a lot of room for improvement in his throwing motion. Adil Glass, he looked very comfortable in the pocket and being able to move around. His presence within the pocket and being able to extend plays was also really good. I didn't notice as much of a running ability from him. Definitely more of a pure passer, but can definitely move around from the pressure. He was another guy that hit some nice tight window throws. But the best of the group to me was definitely Brandon Peters. Again, he was a Michigan quarterback a couple years ago, transferred to Illinois. Again, much like Chase Garber, Peters was mobile. He was able to extend plays when he needed to. I really thought he looked good going through his reads. It looked like he had been there before. Real quick, real nice decision maker, and his deep ball, he throws a pretty nice deep ball with a lot of touch and accuracy. The two running backs that I noticed most in this game were, first off, Bryant Koback, running back from Toledo. He did a real nice job in between the tackles, real downhill type of guy. A bit of power to his game, not as much shiftiness. But the type of guy that can go in and get you a couple yards on short yardage. Next is USC running back Vivek Malapai. He seems like a nice combination of all three type of running back: power, elusive, and receiving. One of the first plays I saw out of him was a catch out of the backfield. He really only caught short passes today, but it looked like he had soft hands, definitely a lot of potential to work with there. He was a nice combination of shifty between the tackles and power. He definitely fought for every yard he went for. Definitely a day three guy to look for if you're looking for a potential overall running back. For receivers, Michael Cooper out of Navy. I think that was just an interesting one because you don't see a lot of receivers coming out of Navy given the triple read offense. He seemed like an okay route runner. Definitely had soft hands, though. I don't think he dropped a single pass in this game. Dejon Dixon, if it wasn't for one other receiver, I thought he looked like the best receiver today. He's out of Nicholls State. He seemed to have sure hands, and by the end of the game was definitely the go-to receiver for his quarterback. The best receiver, though, definitely went to Sam Houston, wide receiver Jaquez Ezzard. Great route running and separation, especially in the red zone. Solid hands and is ready to go get the ball down low, up high, kind of wherever it gets put in his window, but definitely seems like the type of guy that could work himself from a day three to potentially maybe a day two, real late day two. And then Central Michigan receiver Khalil Pimpleton, I believe he was under 6 foot. He was a fun prospect to watch because he reminded me of like a Tavon Austin. He wasn't quite at the level But he's a small, like, gadget type player with, he's really good with the ball in his hands, real shifty. They ran jet sweeps with him out of the slot and all sorts of stuff. It just looked like they were trying to get the ball to him in any way they could, and I think that's a real nice skill to have if you're looking for playing time in the NFL. I mean, not to go too deep into it, but it seemed like he would fit in like a Shanahan type system where you got a bunch of like gadget guys and kind of just want to go creatively with the offense. And then defensively, the two guys that really kind of stuck out to me were both linebackers. First was Josh Ross out of Michigan. Right off the bat, Josh looked real strong reading his keys, especially in the run game. Great instincts and knowledge of what's going on in the front seven. And I mean, his pass coverage wasn't terrible, but he definitely seemed like an early downs guy to start his career, kind of like a run stopper. And then the second was Fresno State, Aaron Mosby. He was another guy, kind of like Ross, wasn't too bad in pass coverage, but definitely some work to be done there. Great instincts, though. Those two seem to be around the ball all day. Zach, you want to start with the East-West Shrine game?
Sure. So I'll just have a few positions. I'm only going to be covering the guys that stood out, mostly in a good way, although there are a few notes I have negatively. We'll start with what was regarded as the big, winner of the day at the quarterback position in Jack Cohn from Notre Dame. A lot of people seem to like his performance. What I noticed is he was pretty accurate, especially in the tight window throws. His decision-making was good, maybe a little bit slow, but there were times where he made the right read quickly. And what I saw more so, though, was, at least in my opinion, a lot of the throws, like 10 yards and further, required a lot of effort. It looked like he really had to dig deep to make the throws. Now, granted, you could argue a lot of players need this to get tight window throws. It just looked like, it made me think his arm strength may be questionable, especially trying to throw a deep ball, because he really didn't unwind that I saw on a long pass. One of the terms I saw thrown around for him was a system quarterback. I kind of believe it, but, in the East-West Shrine game, if he's a viable backup for, 5+ years in the NFL, that's pretty good. The next one I noticed was Brock Purdy. His first throw, I believe it was, he had a beautiful corner end zone, about 40 yards, that was caught, but with the college rules, it would have been a touchdown. With the NFL rules that they play with, he didn't get both feet in. They showed he had a decent arm. I saw a few different arm angles where it used to be viewed as an issue, now maybe starting to be looked at in a different light, possibly. His mobility seemed decent. He scrambled on a few plays. His decision-making, I will say, was questionable. He didn't always keep his eyes up when he scrambled, hence the huge hit he took from the guy that was in the backfield to start covering the running back and didn't even see him. However, I really think I didn't see personally enough plays to make a true determination. I mean, Cohn had what felt like a lot, or at least maybe he just did that good with his chance. So, Purdy physically has some skill. Now, without going too in-depth into the tape yet, it might be just horrible decision-making that, again, he's probably drafted late-round quarterback that maybe he carves out a backup role or maybe he never sees the field. And the last quarterback I want to talk about is Skyler Thompson. Probably had a very strong arm from what I could tell, a quick-ish release, very quick decisions, both in a good and a bad way. When it was throwing, it was good, but I noticed that he started scrambling at times very quickly, like as soon as he got the snap, not in a designed way. Obviously, that's not good. You need to let plays progress. But when he did scramble, he seemed to keep his head up, or at least gave the illusion of it. And his ball placement was pretty good. And I'm not sure if he has a combine invite. I haven't checked this. But if he is, I'd be interested to see him throwing at the combine. And if not, he seems like a definite project that a team could take that has a veteran that's not looking to, leave in a couple of years and see if he develops into something that you can throw into a starting situation. At the very worst, I think he's a backup for a couple of years. This is all without for me. We haven't really gotten into in-depth tape yet. So these are just quick assumptions, and they will definitely get revised. At running back, Ty Chandler. stole the show, in my opinion. He looked like the best player out there, and it wasn't even close. I mean, he had really good burst right from the get-go. He got to the next levels quickly. He showed really, really good subtle movement as well as more extreme cuts and jukes and elusiveness. I think he only caught one pass that I saw, but from what I heard, he's very good in pass pro, and he has good hands, even though he hasn't been used in that role. And just a little note, he comes from North Carolina, where you had 2 recent running backs come out, so it's a good projection. He certainly feels like, to me, to be the highest draftable player on this list. He may have played himself into a day 2 pick. The other running back that really had a good game, even, was Sean Corbin from Florida State. It looked like he had decent vision with a little bit of elusiveness, but his speed seemed not great. It didn't seem like he could run by, the linebackers and the defensive backs that were playing up. But there's still a role for people like that in the NFL. And I think he'll be drafted, not sure when, and he probably will have a role in some capacity. The only other player that played that I have a real note on is Jelani Woods, the tight end from University of Virginia. My note is that he looked huge out on the field. A huge mismatch for linebackers and defensive backs. However, despite the decent athleticism it looked like he only has 1 year of production as a pass catcher. So it's hard to tell if he just wasn't used enough or if he's still got a lot to go. At worst, he could be a developmental tight end that plays off huge. And we'll just have to see, further throughout the process if he builds momentum or if his flaws are exposed. And then my last two notes are 2 players missing from the game, perhaps even the 2 biggest names heading into it. D'Eriq King, played some wide receiver in the practices as well as quarterback, I believe. And then he just wasn't in the game. And I believe I read where he wasn't even on the sideline, but there's not much news as to what happened there. Maybe it's injury, maybe. And then Kyle Phillips, the wide receiver from UCLA, who for the practices seemed to have the most buzz. And he was drawing comparisons I've seen to Hunter Renfrow multiple times, and he was labeled as unguardable in the practices. There's no concrete news that I could find as to why he didn't play, although I saw nothing about injury. So maybe he just decided he did what he needed to do and that he was good to go. And that's all the notes I had from this. It seemed, again, that there was, 2 to 3 players that could be drafted decently high. Obviously, at the East-West Shrine game, there's not going to be these massive prospects for the most part. Maybe some definite steals. But, Jack, what did you see in the game?
You covered a lot of the same notes that I had, so I'm not going to sit here and go too in-depth. But I think just kind of looking at the quarterbacks, Jack Cohen, I thought, was the best quarterback in the ball game. I thought that he was more so the ready-to-play-now quarterback. Like, if he had to be thrown in, he probably would have been the more, ready guy. Whereas I thought Skyler Thompson was the guy who maybe couldn't play now, but could be somewhere and competing within the next couple of years under the right coaching and under the right system. I thought that Thompson, unlike Zach, I thought he was kind of calm and patient in the pocket. Very early on, he took a couple big shots in the pocket. It didn't seem like he was afraid to stand there and take the hit. But to Zach's point, he did scramble a little bit much for my liking. It's something that it almost kind of reminds me of Jalen Hurts, leaves the pocket a little bit too early, whereas you kind of just need to make your reads and let your play develop. But I thought when he was standing in the pocket, he made some nice reads. He was accurate. Obviously, things to work on for a day 3 quarterback, but there's definitely a lot of potential there. And then Brock Purdy, for a guy who, if he came out last year, was projected to be a day 1 or a day 2 guy, he looked pretty disappointing. And to Zach's point, he didn't play the most out of the quarterback, so I don't want to judge him based on a drive or 2. That wouldn't be fair to him. But for a guy that had a lot of hype going into the college football season as the guy who could bring Iowa State to the playoff, he really did kind of look like a day 3 quarterback. But he's definitely going to be a guy to keep an eye on because he definitely has the physical tools to develop into something that the league could use either as a backup or even a competitive backup for a starting role. Ty Chandler was very obviously the MVP of this game. I think that in a fairly weak running back class this year, he could work himself into a top 5 running back. And I think that when you look at games like the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl and the East-West Shrine Bowl, these are primarily day 3, late day 2 guys. Chandler could make a case to be an early day 2 or possibly a day 1 guy. I didn't follow North Carolina much this year, so I don't know what the knocks on him are. That's something, again, to Zach's point, we just need to get into film study for that. But based on this game, he's an aggressive runner with good vision. He wants to run through you, but he has the patience enough to look for the hole, and he's got the nice combo of just like the speed and the shiftiness with the power, and he looks dangerous. He almost kind of looks like a hybrid child of Michael Carter and Javonte, who, to Zach's point, both came out last year. So, I mean, North Carolina must be doing something right in the running backs room to have a third guy coming out in 2 years that looks like he could make an impact in year 1. Sean Corbin, again, another guy between the tackles, downhill power, could be taken day 3 to compete for a power back role somewhere. Pierre Strong had the nice screen pass. He looked powerful. He looked fast. Don't know too much about him, so I'm not going to go too in-depth with that. And then Zach touched on Jelani Woods at tight end. The guy that stuck out to me was South Carolina tight end Nick Muse. Me and Zach were talking about tight ends the other day, and Zach made the point that every year it seems like there's a mid-round tight end that turns into something maybe not like elite, but to be a starter on a team or go and compete for. And I think that Muse could be that guy. He seemed to have really strong route running and the ability to create separation with his eyes and his hips. His quarterbacks really didn't do him any favor, though. It just seemed like he kept getting overthrown. But he is a guy to keep an eye on. He seemed to have soft hands and great route running. So, I mean, with the right quarterback, obviously that's not going to be an issue moving forward. Defensively, I got to be honest, I am a defensive coach, but I was paying more attention to the offensive guys here. Carson Wells, I guess he's the outside backer out of Colorado. I really liked how he played. He seemed like he's a very assignment-driven football player. He knows how to set the edge. He knows his role. He isn't too fast to go after the quarterback. He seems like he's the smarter player that's willing to let the run go inside before, or the play action inside before he lets the quarterback outside. I looked up his stats a little bit. Not huge sack production, but if you're looking for a guy that could develop into something, he's 6'4", 250. Definitely under the right defensive coordinator and right veteran leadership could turn into something. Wisconsin linebacker Jack Sanborn started the game early with the fumble recovery, and then even later on in the game, can't remember which quarterback it was, but was running for the sideline, and he went for the strip. He just seems to have a nose for the ball, very smart, very instinctive. Unlike the two guys that I talked about from the NFLPA Bowl, Ross and Mosby, Sanborn did look like he had a lot more potential in pass coverage. He seemed to know where to be on his drops and just always seemed to know where the quarterback was looking, where he was scrambling to. This was a game that was very heavy on quarterback scrambling, it seemed like, and he just seemed to know what to do there. And then the last player was Diego Fago. He is another Navy player, so obviously at the Naval Academy or any military academy, due to the fact that you're supposed to be military first, there's all like the weight restrictions and stuff. So you're not going to find big guys at those schools, but you're going to find smart players. And I thought that's exactly what Diego Fago was. I thought he was really good in space. I thought his coverage was pretty strong. I mean, there's always room for improvement, even in superstars in the league. But to what Zach was talking about was Fago was actually the guy who hit Purdy. I mean, he stuck his man in the backfield, and Purdy didn't look him, and he smacked him. I thought that his real big weakness was run defense. I thought looking at him, he had good vision. He knew the reads. He knew what he was looking for. But these bigger O-linemen are going to bully him. And, I mean, he was getting turned around by some of these guys in the East-West game. And, I mean, if that's happening to you, what is a guy like Quentin Nelson going to do to you in the league? And obviously that's not to say Fago is going to start in his first year, but it's just something to consider. And, like, one of the guys that he made me think of from the league was Alohi Gilman, who came out either a year or two ago. Gilman was another guy who started at the Naval Academy and later transferred to Notre Dame. He brought speed to the linebacker position for Notre Dame, real good in coverage, but again, he got lost when it came to running teams. But the smart thing that he did was that he translated to safety in the league. I don't know what Fago is going to run. I would be interested. He's definitely a prospect I want to keep an eye on because he could be a guy that maybe does the same thing and translates his skills to safety and makes his way into a box safety role. But pretty much other than that, we're getting ready for the Senior Bowl, and we'll see a lot more of the day 1, day 2 guys, and we'll be back on Sunday to give our breakdown of who we thought really, really shined against the day 1 and day 2 talent.